This is the AI agents framework. And I want to go back to a couple of things before, because we kind of have to understand how AI agents are a little bit different from AIs. They do work off AIs, but there's a different concept. It's a little bit more advanced.
Well,
so
let's define AI and then
yeah,
define agent.
yeah. So that's why I do want to go back. But before we even start that, we gotta talk about, why it is that, using VS Code as the IDE. And so you have an architecture that you're developing, but that architecture has to talk directly to your computer, right? And so when you're looking at an AI versus an AI agent, you want the agent to talk to the computer. There is a meme running out there that that developers, like AI or engineers, computer engineers, like they develop these set of tools, and I wish I had the meme, but the point is that they made it really easy to develop using these tools, and that creates bad engineers, because now anybody can just create code base and put it out there, and then it's a bit of a headache. Like if you don't, if you've never done it before, so I guess it's good work for the engineers that now they have to go back and fix a whole bunch of things. But the point that I'm trying to make is that, hey, this is what we're doing. We're interfacing with the computer. So when we get into vibe coding, you got to understand that, like, hey, this is the whole interaction that we're having. Is we're going to make changes to the actual computer, right? So you have a couple of types of files, and understanding like what the executables are versus what works well for documentation and all those things, so that AI can read it, right? So so to your question, what is an AI? Really, an AI is just an algorithm that takes an input, and it goes through, literally they call it a black box because they don't understand how it works. It's just, they feed it a whole bunch of parameters, and at the level we can actually say that, hey, the initial guy that modeled it, he modeled a neuron, right? A neuron has an input in electricity, and it gives an output in whatever, dopamine. So it has not that level of complexity, but when you hear about parameters, those are the numbers. It literally is an algorithmic neuron that has taken an input, has a function, and then has these different outputs depending on what it thinks, what that function was. And you put a whole bunch, so they can understand how one neuron works, but you put a million of them together, and then it starts to escape. Like that's where you hear about emergent behaviors, and so they don't really know, right? Because you're talking about now to the point where you're getting to like a trillion parameters, so they don't know what's happening where. They have ideas, but so that's what an AI is. It's just that algorithm of taking those artificial neurons, putting them together, and putting an input to an output. Is that kind of?
You took it deeper than I thought you were going to.
Sorry, I can't go through.
An AI is just a large language model that we know of.
Yeah. So and
we're familiar with.
So a large language model, right? So in a large language model, you're taking language specifically,
Right.
and it's basically taking that input, and you can say it's predictive or whatever, but there's a process that takes that language and tries to make it into the output that you're looking for, right? That's the predictive, that's the learning part, that we've taught it, you've trained it into like, hey, when I give you this answer, this is the output that I'm looking for. And I say that's the basis of it, but now you have multimodal language models which don't just take language as text, but also videos, images, sound, and all these other things as input. trained it in the same way, like, turning those inputs into numbers and then an output as into like, hey, this is what you're looking for. So, so I say that because when we're interacting with it at the computer level, there's two kinds of files that we have to interact with. So there's a knowledge base, and then there's the executables, right? So AI really works, just to make the long story short, AI really works well with these type of files. When it's structuring knowledge, Markdown files, JSON files, text files, and then the executables are like Python files, PowerShell, JavaScript. So those are executables, right? And you got to keep in mind where you are in your development process, because you could be very ambitious with the knowledge, and you can go back and forth, and that's the one lesson, if you can take away from this, before you decide to go into executables, like understand the knowledge base that the AI has for your project, and for like because it's prompt engineering. You've told it what the environment is, you've told it what, hey, this is the server, this is the applications that I'm building, these are like the standards that you're working with and all that stuff before you even go into executables.
Like the README file?
Yeah, basically, like the README file would be a Markdown file, and JSON files. So the structure of those files, those knowledge files, not usually, AI works best in these type of formats, which is Markdown, JSON, .text. Let me see what other ones I had. Yeah. Touchscreen? Oh yeah, for TypeScript would be like an executable, right? Yeah, executable. So, so in the context of like creating an agent, an agent, unlike a chatbot, is way more autonomous, right? That's the whole point of autonomous. You're giving it a lot of autonomy in that it will create its own executables so that it could run more efficiently to fulfill your goal as like the developer, right? And what I mean is like, and if you create a workflow that says, hey, I need you to turn, I'm going to give you a very short, you're going to turn this Markdown into a PDF file so that I can send to a printer, right? So that's an example of like a goal that I'm trying to do. But if I tell the agent, hey, do it the best way you can, because we're going to be doing this a lot. I'm going to be turning these Markdown files into PDF files. It could then create a scale. This is where we turn an AI into an AI agent, because it's going to create a Python script for itself, not necessarily for us. Not as we're going to run autonomous. It's going to create it for itself in a folder and say, hey, this guy's doing this a lot, or this guy's telling me to do this a lot. I think the best way for me to do it is to create this Python script, so I don't have to copy the whole file and do all these things and ruin my context, my memory. I can just execute the file by running it through this Python script, and he's going to have the PDF file every time. And that's when you start to get the difference between what an AI is versus an autonomous agent. Yeah? Does that make sense? Yeah?
Top secret agent.
Yeah. So
More
you
like
know,
the ask versus the agent.
right.
Like the ask, or ask it a question, it gives you some feedback, and the agent actually does it for you.
Yeah, exactly. The agent is now running autonomous, because now you fed it parameters, now you fed it like, hey, goals, and it's going to try and execute that task given your parameters, right? So I already talked about the difference between a multimodal LLM versus a large language model. And so what like the future of it is that everything is actually multimodal. And so when going forward, there's more efficiency in the bigger models. It doesn't matter what the context is. The future of it is that they're trying to tokenize, they call it tokenize everything. It doesn't matter if it's text, visual, what kind of data. You're going to have the ability to process that data, but you're also going to have the ability to run smarter, smarter but smaller large language models in devices. So you don't have to go through an API, say to like contact Claude, Gemini or whatever through an API. You can just run a more efficient model locally without one, spending the dollars, and also running out of compute, which the large language models do. And I get back to remember that you're going to be dealing with networks, you're dealing with processing power, and all this stuff that happens in your computer, right? And costs, right? Whatever, if you're in an enterprise like this one, when you use Claude, they pay for it. We don't, but the enterprise has to pay for it. But we also have to pay for the compute. Okay, so I talked about the chatbot, the prompt engineering. So prompt engineering is basically when it comes to AI agents, and I'll show you an example in a bit, is what I talked about. It's saying to the AI agent, hey, we're going to be doing this every time. Find a solution so that I don't have to explain every time that, hey, we're going to be making a Markdown file into a PDF file so we can print it. So in that prompt, I've included all of that. And then next time, I'm just going to tell you, convert this Markdown to PDF. And so now next time I go to the agent, it has a skill, it's built that prompt. And so now you prompt engineer that into this next skill or prompt that you're going to make. So your first prompt is, hey, we're going to be doing all these things. You're going to create a Python file or however you think is best to convert this Markdown into PDF. That's the first prompt. The next prompt, you're just going to convert this into a PDF. Now you've done prompt engineering, right? Because it's going to inject the first prompt into the second prompt. And that's all prompt engineering is. Does that make sense?
The thing I've run into recently is, when using VS Code in the prompt, if you close a folder and you close a project, it loses all the context that it had in the past iterations that you provided.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Is there, do you know, because I can do the prompt engineering to a degree because of the work that I've saved inside of those workbooks and then folders.
Yeah.
But it seems like it has to relearn everything.
It does. And that's what, in the first lesson, I was talking a lot about context.
Yeah.
Every time you start with an AI, you're starting with new context, right? And understanding the level of context specific for that AI, it's like you got to have an awareness of like, hey, if you're working with Claude, your context window is about 100,000 tokens, which is about maybe one document that has 1,000 lines, right? One Markdown document that has 1,000 lines, I think I'm underselling it. It's maybe that 1,000 documents, but yeah, the point is you got to have an awareness. The 1,000 lines of Markdown probably take up, and the cool thing is that now we have tools that tell you, hey, this is where you are with your context.
Right.
You've seen that, right? So you got to manage that context. And this is where the prompt engineering comes in. And I go back to developing a good knowledge base for that project. So as you go along, you got to understand that like, hey, if this is the bigger the project, the better you have to index for the tool to work properly.
So your suggestion is to make KBs?
Yeah, exactly. You're always making KBs for the,
And then
you're not, I mean,
the
you,
pod can learn from those cases?
exactly, exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly it. That's what it, and that's what comes down to like prompt engineering. Because
Instead of having to scan through
right,
whatever
exactly.
script that you created.
Exactly. So I say the knowledge base, creating those markdown, yes, for you, and audit those knowledge files, but you're are you the one creating the code?
Right.
No, you gotta like have it brand new. And you gotta understand that every time that you start up this AI, it has a context window. So work within that context to give it the most knowledge that you can. And the way you do that is by creating the markdown files, the JSON files, the text files, so that it understands your project. So in development, you're usually creating like change logs. You're creating, the README files that explain the project, the structure of the project, all those things before you even ask it to develop like an executable.
Right, because you're not going to leave it open all the time.
Right, and not only that, but if it doesn't understand well the project, your executables, this is what's going to create the problems for you, is the executables are going to be like all over the place, because in coding, like variables, there's a lot of dependencies, right? There's a lot of interconnection, and if they're not, if you're going to have AI just create like a whole bunch of different, you're going to lose file paths, you're going to lose variables. It'll try to recreate variables where you've already created and things like that, right? So that's the simple of it. So I go back to what an agent looks like, which is that prompt injection, right? I think I can probably start going into an example here, but really is creating the markdown files, the knowledge files, the JSON files to say, hey, this is your specific job at this time, so that you don't blow that context window, right? You're not going to tell it to build the whole thing on an application that requires like 1 million lines of code. You can't do that, right? So, hey, understand this knowledge, understand creating this particular endpoint for this particular function, then it's going to understand, like, first of all, it's going to try and understand the overall project, and then go back and create whatever it is that you're trying to do. So, I mean, really, it's all about you becoming an orchestrator, right? And I'm going to show you the project that we wanted to look at, because that's really the last slide. But if we go to GitHub,